Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank my fellow senators from the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, both Senators Alex Padilla and Ben Ray Luján. I also want to thank Andrea Flores and the team from forward.us for being here and always joining us in this effort. And then you're going to hear from today a gentleman, Jose Cabrera, and I can't thank him enough for being here to share his story. Because we are actually here today, over the next month and a half, President Biden has an opportunity to really cement his legacy as a president who keeps families together and protects people who have helped make this country so great. We're talking about the people from Ecuador, El Salvador, and Nicaragua who deserve temporary protected status. We're also talking about dreamers who are trying to renew their status and deserve to have their applications processed as soon as possible. It's very simple. The president has the legal authority to act to give these long-term immigrant communities certainty, and he should use it. TPS and DACA recipients in the U.S. are contributing to communities across the country. So many of them have lived here for years. They work in our industries. They strengthen our economy. They are teachers, they're doctors, they're essential workers, and they pay billions of dollars in taxes every year. For TPS holders, the countries they're coming from are under horrific conditions. So sending them back would be dangerous for them and their families. This is exactly why Congress created TPS status. Ecuador, El Salvador, Nicaragua, they are all clearly qualify for TPS. For dreamers, the United States is their home. It's the only country they've ever known, and they've more than proven their loyalty to this country. It's time for this administration to ensure that we can renew their DACA status now before they come under threat from the Trump administration. Because we know the incoming administration is going to try to implement chaotic immigration policies that tear our families apart. We've seen it before when they tried to do it the first time that Trump was in office. I remember I was here as a senator. I remember the calls that were coming in to my office from people in Nevada who were terrified for their families because of this chaos. But we have a chance to do something about that right now and give these families as much legal protection and reassurance as possible. The Biden administration has the authority to get this done, the legal authority to get this done, and they must act. I have always said we can secure our border and fix our broken immigration system. We can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. And protecting long-term, hard-working immigrant families who have been in this country already is a step in that process. This has been an ongoing effort for all of us here. And we are going to continue being a voice for the people who work alongside Americans to make this country what it is. So I thank you for joining us this morning, and I'm going to hand it off to my colleagues in the Senate.
Thank you, Senator. First, I want to thank Senator Cortez Masto for bringing us together today and for her incredible leadership. I want to recognize my colleague from California as well, Alex Padilla, for the work that he does and the responsibilities that he had on the Judiciary Committee, being a leading voice in helping our colleagues see our brothers and sisters throughout the United States, because we're talking about family today. Standing together, united, unidos como una familia, together and standing strong, united like a family does. Now, over the next 4 years, we have to be willing to use our voices and our advocacy. And I certainly hope that friends across the country agree with that. Democrats, Republicans, independents, leaders of business, of faith, There's going to be a question about what's right and wrong, what's just and unjust. And that should be the policy that we are all willing to work towards. Now, as Senator Cortez Masto clearly stated, we will work with the current and future administration to protect immigrants, TPS holders, dreamers, families fleeing violence, and anyone who seeks shelter on our soil in good faith. Mass deportations will jeopardize the safety and security of millions of mixed status families, sowing deep trust and fear in the communities we represent, and without a doubt, destabilize the United States economy. Now, President Biden, you have an opportunity to take the steps necessary to designate and redesignate and extend temporary protected status for Ecuador, Nicaragua, El Salvador, as well as expedite the process for DACA recipients to renew their status. As a senator of New Mexico, I'm proud to represent over 4,500 DACA recipients, including Arlen, who's 27 years old. Arlen graduated from the University of New Mexico with a dual degree in computer science and sociology and has extensive community involvement, leading food drives in his community in Belen, to helping students learn to code, creating opportunities for them down the road. His contributions are immeasurable. This is the story of many DACA recipients, not only in New Mexico, but all across America. In 2022, immigrants contributed $1.6 trillion to the U.S. economy. $1.6 trillion. Now, I can assure you all Americans will feel the economic pain of losing our immigrant brothers and sisters, not to mention the incredible culture and vibrancy immigrant families bring into our communities and our homes. There has to be a way to work together. And as I close, I'm so very worried of the constant threats of family separation, which we heard again after the Sunday shows and again into Monday. To the incoming president and those that are around who I disagree with on this policy, please don't do it. Stop threatening to separate families. The American people are not on your side on this. Don't do it. We're not going to be silent. We're going to be vocal and we're going to be active. And I hope that we can count on all of America to stand strong in this place where we can work to fix this broken policy. And we can do it in a way that it's tough, but that's fair. I now turn this over to my colleague from California, Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Senator Luján, and good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us in what is not just an important, but obviously a very timely press conference. I also want to thank Senator Catherine Cortez Masto for pulling us together, leading us as she does always, our friends at forward.us, and all the advocates that have been partners and continue to be partners in the fight and that are here today. 40 days. 40 days. We're about 40 days away from Donald Trump reoccupying the White House and bringing with him immigration extremists like Stephen Miller and Tom Homan. Now, if we recall, during the course of his campaign, one of the things that President-elect Trump made very, very clear is that they will do everything they can to roll back protections, and they plan to deport millions of long-term immigrants, including mixed status families. So what does that mean? It means that today we find ourselves in a country where thousands and thousands of DACA recipients and temporary protected status holders fear for their lives. They fear being forced out of the home that they've known for decades. They fear being separated from their citizen spouses or their citizen children. And they fear the violence, oppression, and fundamental lack of opportunity that awaits them in their home countries thousands of miles away. But we also are emphasizing today that, yes, it is a moral problem, but beyond that, it is a clear and present danger to our nation's economy. And we need the people to understand that very, very clearly. And let me explain. By taking work authorization for hundreds of thousands of workers away, we're gutting our own workforce, a workforce that's so critical for the continued growth of our nation's economy. And for all the voters who turned out in November, who told campaigns and pollsters that top of mind for them was the high cost of living, the cost of housing, the price of food, and so much more, energy costs. Let's be clear that mass deportations will directly result in an economic disaster and higher prices. See, millions of the immigrants that Donald Trump promises to target are our neighbors, community members, co-workers who contribute to our country and to our tax base. That includes over 160,000 DACA recipients and over 70,000 TPS holders in California alone. Now, Donald Trump also threatens and vilifies immigrants in his efforts to distract from the fact that he has no real plan. Kind of reminds me of the years and years of attacks on the Affordable Care Act. They threatened to repeal the ACA, and he never came forward with an alternative. And so it is with this. He vilifies immigrants, promises mass deportation, and has presented zero plans for how to strengthen the economy. And certainly no plan for how to reform and strengthen our immigration system. But I also stand here today with some hope. Hope because President Biden still has power while he's in office to help prevent this disaster. And so I'm joining my colleagues to urge the Biden administration to swiftly protect eligible immigrants from countries like Nicaragua, El Salvador, Ecuador from having their lives in America stripped away by restoring their TPS protections and extending them. We're also asking President Biden to urge his administration to do everything in their power to continue to protect DACA recipients, including through processing applications as expeditiously as possible and finalizing some pending regulations. Now, we've been asking for some of this for years now, but today we do so again knowing that the threats to immigrant communities and extended families is both real and imminent. President Biden, you have the chance to cement your legacy on the economy, as well as your humanitarian legacy. Use this moment to protect long-term immigrants and to help strengthen our nation's economy. También quisiera decir en español, para la prensa en español, buenos días. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Estamos reunidos aquí con solo 40 días que faltan antes de que Donald Trump de nuevo ocupa la Casa Blanca. Y sabemos que acompañándolo, personal que incluye extremistas como Stephen Miller y Tom Homan. Y mientras cientos de miles de beneficiarios de DACA y titulares de estatus de protección temporal, TPS, temen por sus vidas en los Estados Unidos. Temen tener que abandonar sus hogares. Temen tener o poder ser separados de sus esposos, esposas ciudadanas o sus hijos ciudadanos. Y temen la violencia y falta de oportunidad que los espera en sus países de origen. Y queremos ser claros que no solo es un problema moral, sino es una amenaza económica para los Estados Unidos. Al quitarles la autorización de trabajo a cientos de miles de trabajadores, estamos destruyendo nuestra propia fuerza laboral. Y las deportaciones masivas que nos ha prometido Donald Trump serán desastrosas para nuestra economía. Donald Trump amenaza a los inmigrantes también para tratar de distraer al hecho que él no tiene ningún plan para fortalecer nuestra economía y ningún plan para mejorar el sistema de inmigración. Pero estamos reunidos hoy también con esperanza. Esperanza porque Joe Biden sigue siendo presidente. En el tiempo que tiene todavía, tiene el poder para prevenir este desastre. Pedimos que el presidente Biden y su administración rápidamente proteja a los inmigrantes elegibles para protecciones de TPS de los países como Nicaragua, El Salvador y Ecuador. Y les pedimos que hagan todo lo posible para proteger a los beneficiarios de DACA, procesando las solicitudes lo más pronto posible y finalizando unas regulaciones que tienen pendiente. Y haciendo esto, el presidente Biden puede fortalecer su legado económico y humanitario. Este es el momento. Este es el momento para proteger los inmigrantes de largo plazo y fortalecer nuestra economía. And with that, let me introduce Andrea Flores from Forward.us to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I want to thank the Latino senators we stand with here today. Senator Cortez Masto, Senator Padilla, Senator Luján. My name is Andrea Flores. I am representing Forward.us, a bipartisan immigration advocacy organization. And I'm so honored to stand here today because for the past 4 years, these leaders who are standing behind me have been deeply invested and steeped in the needs of the communities they represent and have been pushing for tools like temporary protected status, like expediting processing for DACA recipients, and they have been representing their Latino electorate and their states, and they have been too often not listened to in the last 4 years. So let me go ahead and talk about what Biden can do now. There is still a window to act, but that window is closing quickly, which is why Forward is coming now to remind President Biden that he can still use TPS to protect people from Ecuador, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. TPS is a law that was created, a bipartisan law that was created in 1990. It was signed into law by George H.W. Bush. It has been used by presidents of every single party. It requires a sober legal assessment of the diplomatic, foreign policy, and country conditions determining whether an individual can safely return to their country of origin. This is not a difficult question for the Biden administration, which has frequently used TPS and has used TPS already to initially protect people from Venezuela. It is extended TPS for countries like El Salvador. But now this decision is being politicized in the aftermath of an election, and factors that are not in the law could potentially stop the Biden administration from acting and using the tools that they have to protect hundreds of thousands of people living in our communities from what are the promised mass deportations and guaranteed family separation that are to come. I want to talk specifically about Nicaragua because President Biden has called out and extended the diplomatic emergency that has been caused by the Ortega Murillo regime. And just 2 years ago, He created an incredible program that allowed Nicaraguans who could come to the United States with an American sponsor to do so, fleeing the harm and the repression that has been carried out against religious groups, civil society, and civilians. Those people will now lose legal status in the next administration. Those people will be subject to mass deportations, and they'll be returned to a country where they will be guaranteed to be persecuted for their affiliation with the United States. So the usage of TPS historically has always reflected the best of what our country does, which is to protect people fleeing harm from oppressive regimes. To fail to act now to protect those people that we welcomed in and provided refuge to would be a stain on the Biden administration's legacy for years to come. It is not just a legal assessment in this case, it is a potentially life-saving decision. And I want to say after this election, there's a lot of discussion about whether what Latino communities want and what immigrant communities mean to the United States. But let's be really, really clear what TPS holders have meant to this country. If Biden were to designate TPS for Ecuador, for example, he would allow these people to contribute $5.9 billion to our economy. If he were to redesignate TPS for Venezuela, he could expand upon the $11.5 billion that they have already contributed to this country. In fact, protecting people from repressive regimes is what presidents of every single party have done since TPS was created. So why delay what is right to do, what is legal to do, and what simply requires an assessment by the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security to do? We should all take President Donald Trump at his word. We know that tens of millions of people are terrified for themselves and their families and their loved ones, and we know there are steps that President Biden can do to help those people. At Forward.S, we have found that 28 million Latinos in the United States of America live in mixed status and undocumented families, including more than 11 million U.S. citizens who could be impacted by the policies in the next administration. We know and have known that DACA is increasingly under threat in the courts. We know the Biden administration has a legal authority, can and should expedite the processing of every DACA renewal application that's in the pipeline. If President Biden has a legal authority, there is no reason not to act. We know also that President Biden often struggled to set an immigration agenda that met the American public where it was. But if we look back on his usage of tools like TPS, when we look back at times when he stood with Dreamers, there was no political pushback. In fact, people celebrated TPS for Ukraine, TPS for Afghanistan, the initial TPS designation for Venezuela. And I want to remind people that even Donald Trump, in his first term, understood the importance of using his power to protect people from repressive regimes. And on his last day in office, he issued temporary protections for Venezuelans on his last day in office. So, I am so proud to be standing with these incredible leaders who to me represent the future of immigration reform, who to me will navigate this moment, defend our communities, but will also set forth common sense, practical immigration policies that will help Americans and immigrants co-create a better future for this country. We don't have to choose, as Cortez Masto said, between a secure border and a functioning immigration system. We can and should have both, but these leaders must be at the table and must be setting that policy in order to do so. So, once again, there is no legal reason to delay, to politicize these tools, to take the election as any reason not to use them would be a misuse of the TPS law that has been once again a bipartisan tool to represent our foreign policy and immigration interests since 1990. So it is an incredible honor to introduce Jose Cabrera, who has been in the United States for over 30 years, who represents the best of what our immigration laws have created, and who is a part of this country, our community, and all of us will continue to fight for him.
Aló, my name is José Cabrera, soy de Salvador, tengo 38 años de estar viviendo acá, estoy por el TPS, vengo a pedirle al presidente Biden que me extienda el permiso para más tiempo y para los que estamos, todas las personas que tienen el TPS, que los ayude por favor para así estar tranquilamente aquí, viviendo en este país y seguir buscando trabajo, lo que estamos en trabajo y por que lo hayan entrado para aplicar la residencia. Esos son mis mejores deseos. Sí.
I'm going to translate real quickly. It's Jose's first press conference, so give him a big welcome. Jose is a Montgomery County resident. He's been in this country for more than 30 years. He is a TPS holder for the proud country of Salvador, and he's here today taking off work to once again urge President Biden to act now. Jose has been part of his community for a long time. He's a landscaper. He's lived his whole entire life here. And so Jose is here today to send a message on behalf of people like himself, right, who has TPS, but once again urging the president to act now. Gracias.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough, Jose, for being here and having the courage to come forward. Thank you. And everyone else joining me. I so appreciate, again, this push and this ask of the administration to just utilize the legal authority they have to give certainty to these individuals and help keep these families together. So with that, thank you for joining us. Happy to answer a few questions if anybody has any questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have two questions. Why do you think Biden has taken too long to work on this that you are now exposing? And the second question, you have had conversations with the White House. What have they told you?
I've had conversations with the White House, yes. I think several of us have, and they are considering this and looking at this now. That's what I know and understand. And my hope is that with the continued push and the outreach, not just by us, but so many of us, to get them over the finish line, to say you have the legal authority, take it, will help them make that determination and take that action.
Any date?
No date has been given yet. We've got until as long as the administration has the authority in the Oval Office. Any other questions?
You may not get from Biden the things that you're asking him, so what is your plan for the next 2 years?
Just like we have in the past under this previous administration, I can speak for at least my colleagues in the Senate. We're going to do everything we can to ensure we're protecting these families and take every legal action, take action. Listen, I am hopeful that the incoming administration, I listened to President-elect Trump's conversation on Sunday on Meet the Press. One of the things he called out was his hope that he could do something for Dreamers and work with the Democrats. I'm always ready to work with them. In the last administration, was willing to do just that. We worked with them. But you've got to keep in mind, and this is why we need our employers, this is why we need the faith-based community, this is why we need everybody to come out and make a push. The last time he said that, and we brought him a bipartisan bill to do something to protect our Dreamers, he killed it. And so we have to continue this push and take every action that we possibly can to protect our communities. And again, let me stress this, because we can do both. We can secure our border and put resources there, and I have already voted to do just that as somebody who comes from Nevada, is not on the border, but what happens at that southern border bleeds into Nevada, and as Attorney General worked to address the drug trafficking, human trafficking, weapons trafficking, money laundering that was coming across the border, and we can have an orderly system for people to come across the border. We can do that, and we can fix this broken immigration system for those so many who are already in our communities. You've just heard from Jose that are here. They're living here. They're contributing. They're law-abiding. They're raising their families. Right? They're part of our workforce and our economy. We can do both of these, and we should. And we have to start calling out individuals who want to engage in this fear-mongering and conflating the two, because they're not the same, and we can do both. And I feel so strongly about this, but I know my colleagues do as well. So I don't know if Ben Ray, Alex, you want to talk about incoming administration and anything else that we plan to do?
Just a couple of quick things. One, to reiterate, this is not the first time we've called with these requests to the White House. We've individually and collectively have sent letters, have discussed this with not just President Biden over the years, but several administration officials. One indicator that we're making some progress, the word we're getting from Secretary Mayorkas and the DHS is that they are picking up the pace in which they're processing DACA renewals, et cetera. So it's encouraging. But again, the urgency of the next 40 days will remain. And so we're going to keep pressing. We're going to keep pressing. I'll just, another note, call your attention to a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. Chairman Durbin scheduled a hearing specifically to begin to shed light on, so what does Donald Trump's threatened mass deportation mean? What does it look like? What's it going to cost, right? For colleagues who are worried about the federal debt, the federal budget, the cost of deporting millions and millions of immigrants, including long-term immigrants, is not cheap. It's not insignificant. Let alone, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, what would it mean for the economy when our workforce is reduced by so many workers? So if you can, I'd encourage you to revisit the conversation we had yesterday in Judiciary Committee.
Thank you.
And I would just simply reiterate what my colleague shared, which is some of these moving pieces by federal agencies is encouraging, but more has to be done in these particular spaces as well. And as Senator Catherine Cortez Masto clearly articulated, there's willingness to work together with our colleagues, with the incoming administration. I certainly hope that the path that was taken by the incoming administration in the past, when a compromised bipartisan effort to be able to address a broken immigration system, provide more support when it came to border security, more certainty for our DACA brothers and sisters across the country, that would be something that would be agreeable, that he would accept. So we're here again. But with that being said, we need to come together as a country, the business community, the faith community, every one of us across the country, to speak clearly and loudly and help organize and bring together the American people so that we can get this done together.
Thanks, Ben Ray. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.